we need to get into our first event for tonight. Couldn't be more excited to have Jill Heinerth joining us. She is an underwater explorer, a writer, a photographer, a speaker, a filmmaker, a pioneer of technical rebreather diving. She's led expeditions into icebergs in Antarctica, volcanic lava tubes, submerged caves all over the planet. Jill is the first explorer in residence of the Royal Canadian Geographical Society. She's obviously also a fellow of the Explorers Club. We're broadcasting to the Explorers Club Facebook channel right now as well. And then her book, Into the Planet. If you don't have it, get a copy of it. Next time I see Jill, she's going to have to sign it for me. It's been lauded, I mean, everywhere. Wall Street Journal, Oprah Magazine, New York Times. So pretty awesome to have Jill joining us live today. I'm going to bring her in. Hey, Jill, how you doing?
Hello, great to see you.
Oh, it's so good to have you joining us. Oh, and the kids' book too. Where do you get the time, Jill? You've always got something awesome on the go.
Yeah, I keep myself pretty busy.
All right, I think that's the only way to be.
Absolutely, yeah.
All right, Jill. Well, it's a pleasure to have you kicking off our evening event. I am going to let you take over for a little bit, and then we'll see what questions come in via the chat.
Awesome. Well, I'm so excited to be with you all. I'm going to share a little bit about my life as an explorer. And I explore in a place that not too many think about. It's black, because I swim through the veins of Mother Earth. So I'm swimming in water-filled cave passages beneath your feet, and it's far more than blackness. These caves are like museums of natural history. They contain information about Earth's past climate, about past civilizations that have used these as portals to another world and left behind cultural assets in these places. But we also study biology in underwater caves, because even though things will never, ever see the light of day if they live in these caves, there are animals that can live in these spaces, never, ever encountering the sunlight. There's so many more other scientists that I get to work with. And it's extraordinary, because I become the hands and the eyes for scientists and engineers in these environments. I'm their specialist, bringing back information and samples for them. And as you can see, sometimes it is like swimming through a crystal chandelier. These places are stunningly beautiful, and it's an enormous privilege for me to, at times, be the first person to see a place and bring back information from these places. Like, we know more about space than we do about underwater caves. Now, the tools that I have with me for my work are cameras. Obviously, I'm always going in to shoot still photographs as well as video, whether it's for educational research or for television programs. That's what I'm using those tools for. But I'm also using specialized life support technologies as well, something called rebreathers. Rebreathers are very similar to what an astronaut wears to do a spacewalk. It recycles our exhaled breath and allows us to basically conserve molecules and create as few exhaled bubbles as possible, thus preserving the environment that I'm swimming through. So as I mentioned, I work with so many different types of scientists. Here, we're looking at paleoclimatology, Earth's past climate. I'm working with paleontologists and also with archaeologists studying these places and the remarkable finds that we have. I also work with hydrologists and hydrogeologists who are interested in where water is moving inside the planet and how we might protect that for future generations. And then, as I mentioned, I work with biologists studying the unique life within these underwater cave systems. Most of the work that I do today, I want to have a very specific purpose, because for me, if I'm going to take the extreme risks that are involved with working in these environments, I want to be sure that I'm doing something positive and bringing back information for, a better understanding of our planet. And so I'm focusing mostly in water literacy issues and climate change these days. And my work takes me all over the planet. So sometimes you'll find me, camping in the Arctic on top of the Northwest Passage here. In this case, making a film. But you might find me in a place where you wouldn't even imagine a dive site, like here in the western desert of the Sahara, because there are dive sites here too, some pretty unusual ones, in fact. This is almost right on the Libyan border in Egypt. Very interesting place. But you'll also find me underneath the Ural Mountains in Siberia, where I dive in the world's longest gypsum cave that's submerged, or inside volcanic lava tubes, in this case, inside the Monte Corona volcano in Lanzarote. But my work takes me inside flooded mines, and even in places like where I'm swimming with sea lions, for instance. But it's not just caves and mines, it's also shipwrecks. So this shipwreck in Newfoundland, Canada, in fact. So a lot of my work takes me all over the place. But what I really wanted to share with you today is the mindset, like how I do these things, how I face these challenges and fear, and the tools that I use in order to tackle very big problems. That's what I call the explorer's mindset. To begin with, I have always been this very curious person from childhood onward. So curiosity, novelty, and sensation seeking really describe sort of who I am and what I do. And it turns out that those characteristics may actually be defined by my genes, because adventurers, explorers, many of us, like perhaps as many 15 to even 30% of the population, may have what we call the wanderlust gene, the 7R, DR4 7R allele, that describes us as those sensation seekers, curiosity seekers. We might have been the hunter-gatherers in early civilization, where others stayed at home and planted the crops and took care of the homestead. We might have been the ones that were out gathering. So the way that I use that mindset is through what I call evolved risk-taking. So it's a matter of perspective. Now, when you look at a man walking around on the surface of the moon, you don't necessarily say, oh my goodness, he's taking so many crazy risks, that's nuts. But I've been labeled that way in the past, and it could partly be because I'm a woman. They think, oh my gosh, why are you going into this dangerous place? But for me, I only take these risks when I have fully examined, how I'm going to take these risks. So I use what I call mindful preparation in order to solve big problems. If we look at big problems, like let's just say climate change, for instance, we can't always say, oh, this is how we solve it, right? It's too big a problem. And so we have to kind of break things down and do mindful preparation to take the next best steps towards a solution. So when you can't solve the big stuff, solve the little stuff instead. So I began by identifying all the risks and all the fears. And the fears can be very real, or they can be just, completely psychological issues in my head. But before I do a dive, I have to make that list. What could get me in trouble today? So I really work through that list of fears and risks, and I pre-visualize those to create a toolbox of solutions so that by the time I actually submerge underwater, I know how I'm going to deal with anything that might happen. So I've literally sat down, like I'm dressed, I'm in my equipment, and I've gone, okay, well, if that hose blows, I'm going to have to reach this valve. Can I reach it? Oh, yes, I can still reach it. There it is. I've reminded myself how to do that action. And so I pre-visualize and rehearse all of those things so that I have the toolbox to move forward and solve problems. And I visualize success too. And that's like to deal with all the emotional issues, but also the motor skills necessary to solve problems. And long before I even do the dive, I've done a lot of rehearsal and repetition. So there's a lot of training involved in what I do. And we train over and over and over again. And For instance, after a time like this, when we've all been on these stay-at-home orders in Ontario where I live, that means I've been out of the water for about 5 weeks now. And when I get back into the water, I'll have to rehearse and practice and repeat things a little bit more to bring myself back up to a certain level of currency. Because we have to expect that there will be a crisis. We have to expect that there's going to be roadblocks for whatever we do in life. And when we expect and sort of premeditate these crises, then we can also pre-visualize the success for dealing with those. And it comes down to one thing. When you're really, really scared or startled, the most important thing is to learn how to breathe. So if something happens underwater, like I'm suddenly trapped and the guideline is broken and I can't see in the cave and my heart rate starts to go up and my breathing starts to go up, the first thing I have to do is take a very deep cleansing breath right down into my hips, filling up my lungs all the way up into my neck. And as I do that deep cleansing breath, I tell myself, emotions, you won't serve me well right now. So I separate myself from the emotions and I say, all right, go away. We'll deal with you later. It's time to be pragmatic. And as I'm pragmatic, I start taking very small steps towards success. So I don't know the big answer, how I'm going to get unstuck, how I'm going to patch the guideline, how I'm going to get back to clear water, how I'm going to get to the exit of the cave. But I can take the next best step forward. Okay, first, I'm going to patch the guideline, right? And then as you take that step forward, you think positive and remain positive, like, okay, I did that. All right, what's next? And you move on. So it's very important to stay focused on the present. I'm not thinking about, oh my God, I might die, right? I have to stay focused immediately on the next step ahead. And I celebrate the small victories. So when I've patched the guideline and gotten unstuck and I've begun to move my way towards the exit, I can celebrate and continue to move forward. Because if you start focusing on that doorway, that exit of the cave, or the big, big problem that you can't quite solve yet, then you can really lose yourself and the emotions can come flooding back in. All the while, it's really important for us to recognize our limits. So I'm all about exploration and discovery and moving forward, but I'm also always aware that at any time I might need to call the dive and abort. It might be when I'm within like an inch of success. It might be as I'm reaching out to this proverbial treasure chest, and I may need to go, whoa, not today. It's time to turn around. It's time to abort. There's always going to be another opportunity. And when I do that, I want to reframe that abort, reframe that. It's not quitting, it's not failure, it's actually discovery learning. It's, I've gotten to a point where I know I need to turn around. I've learned something, but I need to go back, reassess, and make a new approach for next time. So it's not failure. I mean, the light bulb wasn't invented the first time around. There were 100 iterations before there was success, but we don't think of Thomas Edison as a failure, right? He just had discovery learning opportunities each time something didn't work as he expected. And after you've, gotten out of the situation and you're sort of back out of the cave on land, breathing the fresh air in the sunlight again, don't forget that you need to post-process whatever just happened and give yourself an opportunity to honor the emotions that might have come with that situation. So you've kind of taken that breath out now, and it's okay to let the emotions flood back in because you must deal with them. If you were terrified because of something that happened or just stigmatized because of a failure, you've got to give yourself time to reprocess those emotions again. And that's a mindful assessment that can offer focus. So when it all comes down to it, and I'm staffing an expedition, these are the kinds of things that I'm looking for. I'm not looking for the best camera operator or the best diver or the best director or the best sound guy. I'm looking for people that are really good thinkers, really good team players, right? People need to be resilient, strong mentally, and versatile. Like, I'm really happy if you're a good camera operator or a good diver, but are you willing to like do arts and crafts to make a little filter for a light or a sampling device for something we're about to do inside the cave? Because I need those kinds of people too. People that can think outside the box and outside of their specialty and do other stuff. So I need people who have neuroplasticity, who can multitask and collaborate well, and also have empathy. I want good people who are good to each other and support each other in the field. Like, when somebody brings me a cup of tea when I'm having a bad day, it's like, oh, thank you. That's just as important as the note taking that was necessary for the scientific activity that we just embarked on together. And then I also need someone who understands how to nurture and understands global interconnectivity. We have the world's knowledge at our fingertips. We have the world's experts at our fingertips. And if you're able and willing to get online and use the tools at our fingertips, you can build a bigger and better team for all of us. So those are the kinds of skills and talents that I'm looking for when I'm staffing an expedition team. And it's something to keep in mind no matter what scientific pursuit you're interested in. Those other skills are equally, if not even more important than your area of specialization. And probably, more important today as we all become these multitaskers with many, many different literacies that we're capable of. The last thing I want to leave you with before I just open this up for questions is that, hey, it's okay to be scared. I want to work with people that are afraid. I want to be afraid before I go on a dive. I want to dive with somebody that's afraid because it means that we both care about the outcome of our choices. And it means that we're both willing to be explorers, because as we step into the darkness together, prepared and having assessed the risks appropriately, and we stand on that threshold of the blackness and just a little bit of light coming into the cave, that's where we stand on the threshold of opportunity to do something that's new for us individually, or perhaps new for humanity. So fear is a good thing. It drives you towards discovery and exploration. So I think we should just open this up and have an opportunity to answer some questions that I think Joe is gathering online right now. And it could be anything about the underwater work that I do, about fear, or about the tools that I think explorers need.
All right, that sounds good to me. Jill, thanks for a great presentation. I love that you brought that up at the end. It's okay to be afraid. I've been diving for well over a decade, but every dive you kind of still get those little butterflies, and I think it's
That's
because
a good thing.
exactly, you're thinking, you're making sure everything's prepared. I think the day those butterflies are gone, that's not a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
All right, very cool. Well, the first question that's come in online so far, so there is a chat sidebar on Facebook and on YouTube. So go ahead, those who are tuning in, and send some questions in. But the first one we have, your rebreather pretty much makes you an underwater superhero. So Rob is wondering, how long can you stay underwater?
My longest mission, diving mission's been 22 hours. So yeah, most rebreathers have a range of somewhere between 4 and 6 hours without any special additions to them. But these days we might use more than one rebreather or additional strategies to stay longer.
All right. Well, I've got another question that just came in here from Savannah, and they're wondering, well, first of all, they say amazing presentation, which awesome. When did you start your diving? What got you into diving in the first place?
I wanted to dive from the time I was a little kid, from watching the Apollo missions on TV and watching Jacques Cousteau. I did my first dives in a swimming pool as a teenager, but I didn't get certified until I was in university, because it was really more of just like saving the money to buy equipment and do the training. But for people out there that are interested, you can start diving when you're 10 years old now. And there are dive shops all over the world that'd be happy to take you in for an open water scuba class.
Absolutely. So another, cause that you championed is protecting our water,
Yeah.
our groundwater. So can
Mhm.
you talk a little bit about what it's
Mhm.
like to dive in, the water that we're drinking?
Mhm. So, I mean, one thing I like to say is that, hey, the ocean begins beneath your feet. Wherever you are listening from today, the ocean begins beneath your feet. Because, like, I'm swimming through the veins of Mother Earth. I'm swimming in the sustenance of the planet, this beautiful, clear water that we use for drinking or for um, fueling industry or for serving agriculture. So I'm in that drinking water, but I'm at the beginning of the pipe. And anything that happens on the surface of the earth, anywhere on the planet, can soak into the ground and affect your drinking water resources. And then eventually, my pipeline of cave water will feed an estuary, a river, a lake, and head out into the ocean. So the ocean begins beneath your feet, wherever you are.
All right. I love that. Absolutely. Okay, another great question here online. Wondering
Mhm.
about a memorable expedition where maybe there was a moment of fear or a real big learning experience.
Ooh, I've
Probably a
had a
lot.
lot. I remember an early boss saying to me once, "Hey, when are we going to stop learning and when are we going to start making money?" But yeah, I'm all for learning experiences. I did have one scary situation where I was trapped in a cave behind a scientist who was panicking, and it was in a really small cave, like literally like the size of squeezing underneath your bed. And it was a very serious problem. I mean, she was stuck, the guideline was broken, no visibility, and my life support system, one of the two halves of my life support system, started packing it in. So I had a lot of issues to deal with, and my heart raced and my respirations went up. But as soon as I took that cleansing deep breath, I was able to bring that back down under control and just focus on those steps towards getting home. But at the end of the day, I was an extra 73 minutes inside the cave than I'd initially planned. So that's a long delay. But you have to know in your heart that you have the tools, the knowledge, and the ability to get home safely, and never forget it.
Absolutely. So, Jill, can you tell us a little bit about what it's like? Some of the places you've explored, nobody has been before, and
Mhm.
very few people may follow. Can you tell us a little bit about the process of when you're pushing into a new
Mhm.
section of a cave?
Yeah, that's one of the great privileges that I have to be one of the first explorers. Now, when we explore a cave, we lay a guideline. So we have a spool of double braided nylon guideline that we're actually laying into the cave, and we're tying it off carefully so that if the visibility is completely blitzed and we're blind on the way out, then we can just put our hand around that guideline and follow it all the way out of the cave. Because when you explore a place for the first time, you usually do completely blitz it just because your bubbles hit the ceiling and the silt rains down on top of you. But on the outbound trip, I have to make a map. So I'm actually surveying on the way out. I'm measuring and getting directions and starting a very preliminary map of what I've just explored. Because if you don't make a map and produce the survey, it doesn't count. So it's very important. But as I go into these new places, I'm very, very carefully assessing every moment. Can I turn around? Will I be able to get out here? I'm watching my time. I'm watching my resources to make sure that I have plenty of backup time to get out, because sometimes getting out might be slower on these exploration trips.
All right. Well, Jill, you and fellow explorer Kenny Broad, you were the first to take our new satellite units,
Oh,
our
yeah.
size satellite units out into the field. You
Mhm.
broadcast live from the Bahamas on the Blue Holes expedition to thousands of students, which was just awesome, a ton of fun. What advice or what message would you have for students, for young explorers, young conservationists?
Oh, wow. I would first say that absolutely nothing is impossible. So, whatever you want to do in life, it is possible. There are not very many gatekeepers to stop you today if you've got the mind and the determination to do it. And I would also say start early. So, start taking pictures, start shooting videos, start writing stories. Like, no matter what you do as a scientist or an explorer, you're going to need to be a storyteller in order to get a grant, in order to do outreach work. And so develop your storytelling skills and, start your own website and start sharing those with the world so that you get comfortable speaking in front of people like this too.
All right. Great advice, Jill. I can't believe how quickly a 25-minute session goes.
I know.
Next time around, we're going to have to make these a little bit longer. Oh, I should give a shout out to your fellow Royal Canadian Geographical Society Explorer in Residence. George Karunas is tuning in right now. He says Jill is awesome. So
Hey, George.
If you don't have it already, check out Jill's book. It is awesome. Jill, thank you so much. Thanks for everything that you do. Thanks for the outreach. And thanks for kicking off our evening of events.
My pleasure. Have a great trailblazing weekend, everyone.
All right. Thanks so much, Jill.